And very rainy Monday morning, the 11th of September 2017. My name is Patience Bello Kafo. We're happy to be here on the show with you. Today we're looking at the ongoing strike between ASUU and the federal government, and of course NARD, that's the Resident Doctors Association, who are also on strike as we speak. My name is Patience again. Welcome to the program. Good morning, Justin.
Good morning. Rain, go
rain,
away.
rain,
Come
rain.
again another day. Little Patience wants to play.
I don't feel like playing right now. It's too wet to be out there playing.
I can imagine. Good morning, Lagos and beyond. My name is Justin Akadonye. Glad to have you join us on the show. I trust you are warm wherever you are, because it's a cold, wet day. It's been raining all morning in Lagos. And wherever you're watching us from, I hope you're actually doing well. I trust you had yourself a wonderful weekend. Well, we'll just start the show with this report put together by our correspondent in Ogun State, John Felix. He's asking if strike actions are just the only language the federal government understands. We'll be right back with the show after this report. Stay with us. First, it was a season of protests by various groups, civil societies, against the APC-led government. Now it has metamorphosed into strike actions by different labor unions, consisting of the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASUU, and the National Association of Resident Doctors, NARD. Just recently, the Academic Staff Union of Polytechnics, ASUU, and other unions have signified interest to commence theirs on Monday, the 11th day of September, over what they term failure of governments to meet their demands. With all of these coming to the fore, the question remains, has the federal government been fair enough in keeping to their own end of the agreement?
Government should live up to its responsibility. Look, in fact, the reason for any government to be put in place is for the welfare of the people. But if people are complaining about their welfareism and the government is not addressing it, then such a government is good as a failed government. For me, that is only language they understand, but of course, that is not the best. I don't believe the government has been fair enough. Yes, we cannot exonerate all these unions too. We cannot exonerate them. I read what Ted Fund said about the strike action by ASUU. But all in all, the government has failed in its responsibility not to have responded to all those letters as claimed by both ASUU and resident doctors.
The major language that the Nigerian government has been able to understand is a strike action. Since communication is inevitable, then there's need for them to communicate, and the ways of communication has always been through strike action. Government has been failing in all its responsibilities. Several memorandum of understanding has been reached in the past. Talking of 2009, talking of 2011, and so many. So the issue of we cannot. I'm not sure we can trust this. We can trust the government of the country, except things will change today.
And unfortunately, I don't know why governments so much cherish strike before attending to issues. It is becoming embarrassing. This has been what has been happening over and all over again. I think the government should think deeply and ensure that all these embarrassing situations are made or put to a permanent rest.
Another question that needs urgent answer is, how can issues revolving around industrial actions be best resolved with no detriment to stakeholders? These social commentators are of the view that the federal government should take the demands of labor workers seriously and come up with realistic solutions.
Well, for me, the most important thing, first and for all, is for the government to position itself in such a way that Nigerians will trust the government. The problem we have today is that the people do not even trust the government again. When you look at this issue of ASUU, 2009 agreement, 2012, 2013, in fact, they will have a kind of reservation as to the sincerity of the government, even on the new memorandum of understanding they are signing.
As a government, whatever we put into black and white, it is even a serious offense not to obey that. It could be seen as a crime as well, not to obey what the government has reached with the people. It is a crime for crying out loud. So it is a crime against the people. It is a crime against the worker. It's a crime against the parties involved.
I think the proper thing is that if you enter into an agreement, whether as an individual, a body, a group, or government, association, name it, what is more better is to fulfill your part of an agreement, so that one will not look as if not responsible. If a government decided not to honor that agreement, it's an act of irresponsibility from the government.
With the continued industrial action, certainly the casualties will be more devastating. It is only expected that issues surrounding industrial actions will be critically examined and be brought to a logical conclusion. All right, welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching Galaxy today, Monday, September the 11th, and 2017, and we're looking at the ongoing ASUU and National Association of Resident Doctors strike. ASUU started their strike since August 14, and just on Friday, they had a protracted meeting with the federal government, and they said that they're going to revert to the federal government after they have met with their executive committee. So we are discussing that on the show this morning.
All right, joining us here in our Lagos studios, we have a friend of the program. He is a renowned human rights lawyer, Barrister Justice Uwegbo. Good morning, Barrister Uwegbo.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. It's a
once
rainy
more.
day today.
Yes.
Yes.
You know, the traffic is so much outside there.
And speaking about the rain, it's been raining hard on the federal government. So far, till as we speak, the negotiation team put together by the federal government to meet with NARD and ASUU haven't reached any positive conclusions yet. First of all, let's start from how you view the ongoing strike, because it's becoming one too many strikes, you know, as we have it right now. What is really your impression of, you know, every time is either ASUU or the teachers or the doctors or one sector or the other going on strike? What does that even say for the quality of leadership we've had over the years?
Well, truly speaking, it goes a long way to show you that we have an insincerity of leadership in this country. It didn't start today. It didn't start this administration. I don't think it will even end with this administration, because with the way things have been going, people like us, or somebody like me, let me put it that way, never believed that we were going to have strike again in this nation. After all Nigerians were promised in 2014, preceding the election in 2015, we thought by now it would have been you know, a thing of the past, knowing where we are coming from, because what makes you a leader is for you to go and amend certain things that the former leader or the former ruler, let me put it that way, did not do well. But when you now get into position and you're still doing the same thing, which means it is neither here nor there. So in a nutshell, it is so unfortunate that at this stage we are still talking about all these institutions being crippled. Look at the major sectors in the country are being the ones affected here. Look at
Education.
Yeah. Look at
Healthcare.
health. Now, but you know what baffles me? Fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know how to put it. The current minister for health today used to be, or was once, I think in 1984, thereabout, was once the former president of
Resident doctors.
the Nigerian Resident Doctors Association. And I can recall that as at the time he was the president, his union, him and his union embarked on a strike like this.
So he's well aware of what the issues are.
Yes. In fact, at that time he was even sacked. Because if you remember, it was during the military regime. when the president was a military president then. He was sacked. But that is not even the issue. The issue there is this. Having been somebody who has, had the experience of how this thing feels, of what they were going through then, and now you have become the minister for the same sector. Are you not supposed to not even allow these people to embark on that strike?
Because they actually know where it
Let
punches.
me ask a
ASUU's
question.
demands are actually not, too big, if you ask me, because amongst other things, they're asking for the registration of a university's pension and company, and they're also asking for more funding, especially for state universities. Although most people might not really understand what ASUU has got to do with states, since ASUU is actually a federal government thing. But the truth is that these demands are really not far-fetched. I mean, if you ask for better funding, the United Nations required 26% for funding of our budget for education. So what I'm asking right now is that how come since 2009 the issues have not changed, yet the federal government is seemingly not doing anything to just meet those demands, which, if you ask me, are genuine?
You see, when you come to the educational sector, I think that all these things have been deliberate by the government, both the previous one and the current one. Because my reason is this. Today, education has been made the most costliest thing in this country for the masses. Remembering where we are coming from, if you can recount, in the early 60s and 70s, education was almost free in this country. Most of the people that are in government today, 99.9% of them went to school on free education. Now, what triggers that is because they are the ones that owns almost the best universities in Nigeria today, the best secondary schools and high institutions. So they are making money from it. Most of them are even going as far as going outside Nigeria, some other African countries, building universities and all the rest. But again, we are all Nigerians. We see it on social media, internet, and everywhere. All of them, their children are not going to school in Nigeria. They're either in UK, Canada, or USA. So how do you expect them to be interested in the educational sector in this country? So you now see that it's a fallout of bad governance. And not until we do something, and not until we have it that every public officer in this country, first of all, must live in this country. 2, your family, your children, everybody must be in this country, so that they know how this thing feels. For example, most of them, they don't buy. I could remember, I can quote the former CBN governor, Sanusi, when he was the CBN governor. He said he can't remember when last he bought fuel. These people don't know what Nigerians are going through. School is just reopening now. So many people, so many children cannot go back to school. The educational system has been killed. The public schools are no longer working. And the ASUU is now saying there are certain things we can do for us to move forward. Now, every year, you bring out a budget. What is the percentage are you putting up for educational sector? Any country that does not concern itself with the education of the people, that country is a dead country.
Okay, let's bring Abuja into this discussion for a bit. We have on standby the co-convener, Say No Campaign Nigeria, Mr. Ezenwa Nwagu. Good morning, Mr. Nwagu. Thank you for joining us on the program this morning. Now we're discussing the NARD and ASUU strike, which is still ongoing. We'd like to hear from your end how you think all of this will end. We have seen cases like this before, strike, and then they go back, and after a while they go back on strike again, and then the government steps in again, and all. It's like a very funny back and forth between the federal government and the institutions that are affected in this particular case. How do you think we can find a meaningful resolve, to all of these issues?
Well, I think what we're dealing with is first and foremost a question of honor. Honor is a big challenge for quite a lot of people, for government and for its institutions. When you enter agreements with especially a union of intellectuals like ASUU and NARD, the expectation will be that once an agreement is reached, you will take very serious steps to ensure that the agreement is remediated. That's the first thing. The second important issue will be to deal with the nature of the issues. What are the issues that we are engaging? Since September 1992, the twin issues for which government had entered into agreement with the Academic Staff Union of University revolves around university funding and university autonomy. In each of these issues, since 1992, government, what was being requested at that time was 6 billion naira. That was what ASUU requested in 1992, that would revitalize university education in the country. But as you know, government will immediately enter agreements and renege on those agreements. So what we have constantly and continued to deal with has been the reneging of agreements with institutions. There are no new issues that are being canvassed. My colleague in Lagos talked about the issue of funding. It's been the same funding. But in 1992, I remember vividly when ASUU was asking of 6 billion naira, people said, where would that money come from? And all of that. Even parents were at the forefront of saying, look, the ASUU was unreasonable in making his demands. But what you need to do is to simply assess even, committee that federal government itself set up in 2012 to look at the needs assessment of universities. I've got that report here. You will be shocked that in serious places we should not be right now having what you call university education, because the system has completely collapsed. People are offering courses in engineering without the necessary tools. We are graduating people from as computer scientists who within their own institution have no opportunity of using the computer. And so the teachers themselves have a sense that it is injustice to continue to receive pay when the facilities to do the work they are being paid for is not there to continue that work. So what we need to do is to insist that people become honorable. If you enter agreement with your workers, if you are unable to do the needful, if you're unable to meet that agreement, you write on time. You approach them. They are not the ones to approach you. ASUU has continued to write letters. They have evidence that they have written government severally to say, you entered into agreements with us, you are not fulfilling your own end of the can we have a discussion on this? The arrogance that we see in the system is what continues to annoy these unions. And like I said, you are not dealing with National Union of Road Transport Workers at the risk of being immodest, but you are dealing with a union of intellectuals, people who will painstakingly, patiently, and if people understood the process of getting into a strike in ASUU, you will understand that the process is so painstaking. You will have to go to the branches and get a yes from all the branches across the country. Even when that yes is gotten, you bring it back to the National Executive Council of the union. In many cases, they ask you to go back to the unions again to get a yes, to ensure that the issues have been canvassed properly with the unions. And so, if after going through all of that and they enter into an agreement, it is only honorable that people who have entered those agreements keep the agreements. But looking at our institutions, looking at our medical facilities, even the president himself has no confidence in the medical facilities of his own country. What
All right, I think we're experiencing a bit of network hitch there, maybe due to the weather. No, let's bring it back to the studio.
Okay, so Justice, now the next question would be, don't you think we have a case, or should we be declaring a state of emergency in the educational system? Because it's not just about ASUU. Just last week too, the Senior Staff Association of Nigerian Universities and their other counterparts in the technical aspect also joined the strike. What do we have on in our system right now?
Well, you know, when a union embarks on strike, if nothing is done, it will definitely affect other unions, especially within that same sector. That's what they call sympathy strike. Because what affects ASUU, if it's not handled very well, checked, it will also affect
other
the
sectors,
academic staff of universities. And again, a rider to that, I would not be surprised if tomorrow I hear that the Association for Polytechnics...
They are on strike too. ASUU is on strike.
Fine, they will join. Before you know it, secondary schools will join, primary schools will join, and all the rest. But the issue there is this. Who bears the brunt of all these things? Is it the government? Is it the masses? And the answer is simple. It's the masses. Because at the end of the day, the whole system will definitely look as if it's collapsing. As I speak to you now, our university undergraduates, they are at home doing nothing. And you're talking about insecurity. You're talking about how the country can get better. But forgetting that if these people are idle, a lot of menaces will come up into society. The problem we have here is this. I don't think the government, as it is, they are feeling what we are feeling. If I were beginning to ask a question, where did you get it wrong? Things were not like this before. At least in the early 60s. It was not like this. What happened? Where did you get it wrong? Is it not the time we should sit down, pause and ponder? And when people are calling for restructuring, some people will not understand it, they will misinterpret it. I think there is need for us to pause and ponder. The Bible says, come, let us do what? Reason together. This is a time because, like I said, most Nigerians never believe that we will still be in the same situation or condition we are as at today. So, if there's no headway, then what next? I think the best thing is for us to sit down and talk. Let us for once tell ourselves the truth. Let us for once be sincere to this nation, to the country, to the masses. Because at the end of the day, I keep on saying this, even if you succeed in killing all the people you are supposed to govern, who will you govern? And there are so many ways. There are so many ways to kill a rat.
Okay. All right, I want to ask a question, Barrister, before we go back to Abuja. I need to know, what are the modalities, that need to be in place before government can do what is just and what is proper? For instance, there is an allocation for the health sector. Is it that this allocation don't get used up or the funds are not released? What really is the issue? Because the doctors are protesting the sack of some of their colleagues, non-payment of entitlements. They describe it as skipping of their entitlements, non-inclusion in the IPPIS platform, and not payment of, this is the most critical one, their salary arrears. I've not been paid for a bit now. Now you wonder why salaries of people like doctors, are not paid. Why will their salaries not be paid over time when already there is an allocation for the health sector? What are those modalities that need to be in place before things begin to run smoothly?
You see, as far as I'm concerned, there's nothing like modalities. Because we are human beings here. We know the right thing to do.
Sure.
You see, I told somebody some time ago that by implication, you don't even need to go to church or to go to mosque. You don't need to be religious for you to know the right thing to do. Because God himself, in his wisdom and infinite mercy, has given us the Spirit of God in every human being. And that Spirit of God in every human being is a conscience. That is to tell you that God is living with us. So when you're doing the right thing, you know. And when you're doing the bad thing, you also know. So there's nothing like modalities. Ask my mother. If you're my mother, as my mother, I don't need to cry to you before you give me food. It is your responsibility. It is a norm that we eat 3 square meals a day. So you as a mother should know when to give me morning food, breakfast, when to give me lunch, and when to give me dinner. You shouldn't allow me to start asking for it when you know it's your responsibility. So that is exactly what is happening here. Like it's like something. Every year budgets are being passed. There's an amount of money that is meant for the health sector.
Of course.
An amount of money is meant for security. An amount of money is meant for
the education
and so on and so forth. Now that you ask a question, where this fund not being utilized? That is one. 2, the hospitals, for example, as it is today, they generate their own revenue. Because there's no hospital you go today, all the FMCs, all the states and federal hospitals that people don't pay for card.
Of course they do.
They pay for consultations, no matter how little. The issue is that they pay. They generate funds. In fact, the pharmacy, they sell their drugs. Now, what of all those funds that are being generated there? Where is it going? Now, the million-dollar question there now is this. If the doctors are not being paid, is the MDs of these various hospitals also not being paid? They are being paid. They pay themselves salary. So why would you pay yourself salary and you're not paying your workers? 2 things are involved: wickedness and corruption. And that is why when we talk about corruption, when we try to define corruption, people don't understand the real definition of this corruption. I've always said that corruption is not just stealing. No. Go and check the dictionary meaning of corruption. It's defined as any dishonest conduct. Any dishonest conduct is what? Corruption. And that is what we are seeing today. In government, parastatals, everywhere. The conduct of all these MDs and all the rest, they are so dishonest. So until we kill these 2 things, corruption and insincerity and wickedness, we cannot make a headway. Secondly, when you take the wrong people and put them in a position, that is what you keep on getting. I keep on asking a question. Can a person give what he does not have?
No.
And the answer is no. So check the antecedents of all these people that have occupied these various positions, over time. Who are they? Where are they coming from? Go and check their various investments here and there. And you begin to see the wickedness written all over them.
Okay. All right, it's still Galaxy today, and we're looking at the ASUU and the NARD strike this morning. We'll take a very quick break. We'll be back to come talk some more. Stay with us. First, it was a season of protests by various groups, civil societies, against the APC-led government. Now it has metamorphosed into strike actions by different labor unions, consisting of the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASUU, and the National Association of Resident Doctors, NARD. Just recently, the Academic Staff Union of Polytechnics, ASUU, and other unions have signified interest to commence theirs on Monday, the 11th day of September, over what they term failure of governments to meet their demands. With all of these coming to the fore, the question remains, has the federal government been fair enough in keeping to their own end of the agreement?
Government should live up to its responsibility. Look, in fact, the reason for any government to be put in place is for the welfare of the people. But if people are complaining about their welfareism and the government is not addressing it, then such a government is good as a failed government. For me, that is only language they understand, but of course, that is not the best. I don't believe the government has been fair enough. Yes, we cannot exonerate all these unions too. We cannot exonerate them. I read what Ted Fund said about the strike action by ASUU. But all in all, the government has failed in its responsibility not to have responded to all those letters as claimed by both ASUU and resident doctors.
The major language that the Nigerian government has been able to understand is a strike action. Since communication is inevitable, then there's need for them to communicate, and the ways of communication has always been through strike action. Government has been failing in all its responsibilities. Several memorandum of understanding has been reached in the past, talking of 2009, talking of 2011, and so many. So the issue of we cannot, I'm not sure we can trust this, we can trust the government of the country, except things will change today.
And unfortunately, I don't know why government so much cherish strike before attending to issues. It is becoming embarrassing. This has been what has been happening over and all over again. I think the government should think deeply and ensure that all these embarrassing situations are made or put to permanent rest.
Another question that needs urgent answer is, how can issues revolving around industrial actions be best resolved with no detriment to stakeholders? These social commentators are of the view that the federal government should take the demands of labor workers seriously and come up with realistic solutions.
Well, for me, the most important thing, first and for all, is for the government to position itself in such a way that Nigerians will trust the government. The problem we have today is that the people do not even trust the government again. When you look at this issue of ASUU, 2009 agreement, 2012, 2013, in fact, they will have a kind of reservation as to the sincerity of the government, even on the new memorandum of understanding they are signing.
As a government, whatever we put into black and white, it is even a serious offense not to obey that. It could be seen as a crime as well, not to obey what the government has reached with the people. It is a crime for crying out loud. So it is a crime against the people. It is a crime against the worker. It is a crime against the parties involved.
I think the proper thing is that if you enter into an agreement, whether it's an individual, a body, a group, or government, association, name it, what is more better is to fulfill your part of an agreement, so that one will not look as if not responsible. If a government decided not to honor that agreement, it's an act of irresponsibility from the government.
With the continued industrial action, certainly the casualties will be more devastating. It is only expected that issues surrounding industrial actions will be critically examined and be brought to a logical conclusion. All right, welcome back. It's still Galaxy today, this Monday, the 11th of September 2017. We still have Mr. Wangu in our studio in not about Abuja precisely. Mr. Wangu, just before we let you go, can you just prefer lasting solutions to these? Because from what we hear, ASUU is commencing their own industrial action today, and SANU and NAAT joined ASUU in solidarity sometime last week. How do we begin to get out of this quagmire? Very quickly.
One will hazard the guess that we need to take a deeper look into the internal governance issues of the hospitals and the universities. What do I mean by that? Monies are sent to the universities. We do not pay attention into how those funds are expended. Budgets are released, citizens are aloof and insensitive to things that affect them. How many of us follow the budget in such a manner to even interpret what is allocated to health, what is allocated to education? How sufficient is that in dealing with the gamut of the challenges that we face in those sectors? So the internal governance, we have arrogated a lot of power to CMDs. The CMDs have seen themselves more as chief executives. The university vice chancellors have no loyalty to the universities; they have loyalty to their appointers. So those are some of the ways. If universities or hospitals determine who becomes their CMD, that is that autonomy that we're talking about. For universities to be the one deciding who the vice chancellor is. This situation in which the visitor will ask them to bring 3 names, and in most of the cases he will appoint the one who came third, who may not have been the best of the ones that are what the recruitment process threw up. So we have those challenges. But citizen action is also very important. If we are the ones who bear the brunt of the strikes, then we must take more than ordinary interest in the issues that affect us directly. How do we do that? We need to engage these budgets. We need to follow the budget. We need to follow the money. We need to be interested in who gets appointed. Even if the process is not transparent, we should push for it to become transparent. That's why the universities are asking for autonomy. That's why there are issues around who becomes the nepotic considerations that get involved in who becomes the chief medical director, who becomes the head of the hospital, are the issues we need to deal with. But to come out of this, first and foremost, is to insist that government becomes honorable, that government, whenever it has opportunity to enter into these agreements that we talk about, must be honorable enough to implement the agreements that it reached. In 2012, the government, the President Goodluck Jonathan, set up a committee to do a needs assessment for Nigerian universities. It was the committee was peopled by the then head of the then executive secretary of Tech Fund was the chair, and many government people were in that committee. They went around the country, they saw what the needs are, they produced a report. Has anybody engaged that report to look at what the report says and to what extent it is being implemented? So it's not enough, to want government to do something. Governments they operate from the same textbook, from the same template. Templates don't change because somebody is elected. The Minister of Education will not sack the permanent secretaries, the directors, because somebody is elected. So what we need to do is to begin as citizens to pressure people in government to abide by their responsibilities and do what will benefit us. If you leave them without doing anything, after 2019, even when you restructure, because this whole debate about restructuring is giving the impression that once you restructure the country, we are going to move into El Dorado. If the same characters, if the same wicked people that you talked about, if the same insincere people are put in charge of a restructured Nigeria, you are still going to have the challenges that we face. So what we need to do is to get citizens to be more interested. Go and look at chapter 2 of our constitution. The derivative principles of if we look at what is said in that chapter 2 and how it benefits the citizens, that is where our restructuring will start. That government has the responsibility to provide free health for its citizens. Government has responsibility to provide housing. Government has responsibility to defend the welfare interests of citizens. If we follow those deeply and conscientiously, we will be gradually coming out of strikes. But more and more citizen action is required. If the masses bear the brunt of strike actions,
all right, that's as much as we can take from our end in Abuja. Many thanks to Ezenwa Nwago, the co-convener, Say No Campaign Nigeria. We're still looking at the ASUU and NARD strike. In a few seconds, we'll be joining our studios in Ibadan, where representatives of NARD standing by.
All right, we still have Barrister Justice Suhebo with us in our Lagos studios. Now, you heard what Mr. Wagu said there. You want to react to any of the things he said?
Well, there's not much reaction. All he has said they are simple, and but you see, the problem here is this: do we continue talking every day? What do we do?
What more can
Not more. Nothing has even been done. Nothing has been done.
Let me chip in a very quick question. Do you think we as Nigerians, we even have the right attitude? Do you think we even have what it takes to sustain whatever it is we're actually demanding from the government? I'll give you an instance. In some other countries of the world, for a period of 2-3 years, they can stay on a matter and keep protesting every single day for that length of time until their demands are met. But you find it that after like a week or two, the people who are protesting by themselves, you know, now begin to murmur, and before you know it, try to find a way around the issue. So you see, a lot of issues like that are left unresolved. So do you think we as a people, we even have the right attitude?
Yeah, you see, there are two things that have been responsible for that. One is poverty. When I talk of poverty, I'm not talking about poverty of richness.
Okay.
I'm talking about poverty of the mind, and above all, poverty of the stomach. Because in these other countries or nations you mentioned, food is more like nothing. Many Nigerians, what they want is food on their table. They don't care what the government
else
is doing
is going on.
there. So once you provide that for them, if you remember, in 2012, during the first subsidy protests, after about 5 days or 4 days, people started clamoring. They are hungry, they are hungry.
Exactly.
They are not clamoring that, oh, we want to go and sell and go and build a house, but they are clamoring they are hungry. Why? Because these things are not there. And let me tell you, I've discovered that the government we have in this country, both past and now, they are, intentionally impoverishing Nigerians for that purpose. So that at the end of the day, you will not have the strength and the will and the zeal to fight. That is one. Then two, you also look at the issue of the long stay of the military rule in Nigeria, fear of the unknown. People are afraid. Fela said it, and no one die. Mama dey for house, papa dey for house. The policeman go slap your face, you no go talk. I'm a man go whip your neck, go look like donkey. So because of all those past experience Nigerians had already had, they are now afraid of certain things. And that explains why if you want to come out to express your feelings or do any protest, even the peaceful ones, the next thing you see policemen unleashed against the masses. You see military against the masses. So this thing begins to create fear.
Which is harassment.
It is not only harassment,
yes.
It is harassment, it is intimidation, and it is impunity. Now, but this thing will begin to go on until a day where Nigerians will say enough is what? Enough. And I think we are getting close to that stage. Okay. So that is why you see some of these things going the way it is going. But I assure you that with what is happening, many Nigerians are tired. I don't know whether you saw on the internet the video clip where a Nigerian in Italy committed suicide. He fell down from...
Yes, because he was trying to
because they
avoid...
were trying to repatriate him to Nigeria.
I saw that.
So now the issue is this. So you now begin to... So this is how bad the country has become. That a citizen of the country would decide, would prefer to die instead of coming back to his own country. Oh God.
That's really, really sad. All right, let us go straight to Ibadan. We have the treasurer, National Association of Resident Doctors, University College Hospital, Ibadan, joining us. Good morning to you, Mr. Ibuchulan. We're looking at the NARD strike. Can you bring us up to speed as regards what your demands are, and presently what is the federal government saying concerning them? Hello, is Ibadan ready for us? All right, we'll just continue here in Lagos. Before the end of the show, we'll try and re-establish contact with our studios in Ibadan. Yeah.
All right, so we're talking about impoverishing, the Nigerian populace so that we cannot have a voice. But then, in all of this, I'm excited about the fact that even as the doctors are on strike, the resident doctors, it seems like this particular strike has a human face to it, because they're not totally neglecting the patients in the hospital. According to reports that came in, it's like that some doctors are still working, people are still getting treated, and all of that. And you would imagine that with this kind of empathy coming from the doctors themselves, that the government will be quite quick in attending to them. But as at today, I don't know, maybe later today, we're still waiting for the very popular alerts, which they are waiting for before they go back to work. Why is government always so slow, in resolving matters that might become a very big issue if it's not nipped early enough?
You see, I think at this point in time, we should give kudos and even thank the doctors
exactly
that decided to go
and
offer skeletal services.
Yeah.
That goes a long way to show that Nigerians are, I've said this several fora, that Nigerians are human in nature. I think it's an issue of sympathy and feelings for the people. Like I said before, who will always be at the receiving end is the masses. So when you look at it that way, you see, the problem I have is this. We have a government in a country that does not want to know whether the citizens are existing or not. So that is just the problem. And when you look at it this way, you begin to ask, where do we go from here? It's a pity. It's so touching that even everything should happen in other sectors, not the health sector. Let's be realistic to ourselves.
I know, but just one thing I know, fine. Patient just said that this strike has a human face to it. But then again, I'm not trying to sound like I'm the devil here, but the truth is that most times the federal government will always want to use a moral suasion and say go back to work just because of the people, the sick people, and all of that. But the truth is that is what we hear over time. They go on strike, they meet, they dialogue, they appeal for the sake of the people who are suffering. But how long are we going to keep on doing that? Because the same thing will happen over and over again.
Yes, the doctors, as you know, they are people also. They have children. Most of them, their children are not even residing where they are. If a medical doctor is in Lagos, for example, and the child is schooling in Abuja or somewhere, if the child gets sick, he will not start coming back to Lagos. He will be attended to in a hospital there. Yeah. So he's also affected. And there are so many other things. These children, they go to school in the first place. You need to even be mentally relaxed for you to work, especially the doctors. So if you don't have money to take care of yourself, school is reopening now. Many of them will be thinking on how to pay school fees. And you expect somebody who is thinking about how to pay school fees to go and commence a surgery operation on a patient. Is that not suicidal?
Okay, let's see if we can reconnect with Ibadan now. Mr. Egbuchulen Kelvin, he's the treasurer NARD at UCH in Ibadan. Good morning, sir. Hope you can hear us now. We'd quickly like to hear your own contributions to the topic we're discussing, particularly since you're with NARD. We'd like to hear what your most important grievances really are, and what is the way forward from here.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Egbuchulem, the treasurer of ARD UCH Ibadan, and I'm also a member of National Association of Resident Doctors. Our struggle is summarized into 6 points. Firstly is non-payment of our salaries. We've been having recurrent shortfalls over the past 1 year, from December last year to date. Many centers have not even received some forms of allowances as it were. The government called it shortfalls. We don't understand what shortfalls mean. We render services to patients, we go about our duties, trying to take care of patients and all that. And at the end of the day, what we hear is shortfalls. It will surprise you to know that many centers have not received August salary just because of this singular reason called shortfall. And currently, our management is even planning to pay us 72% of our salary, and they attribute that to shortfalls. So that's one of the bane of this NARD strike. Secondly is non-placement of house officers appropriately. This issue has been on since 2014, where house officers have not been placed in the appropriate grade level and step. So we've been calling on government, we've been writing a lot of letters, we've been having talks, and at the end of the day, nothing has come out of it. Thirdly is placement of our members, appropriately. Many of them have been stagnated over the years. They've not been promoted, and many have had cause to even resign because of non-progression in their place of appointment. The fourth thing that has been one of the front burners in this issue of NARD strike is the non-capture of our members in the IPPIS platform. The IPPIS platform is a regular platform that federal institutions use or engage in paying staff. We've been on what they call Give Me regular platform, and we think with this platform, these recurrent issues of non-payment of salaries, shortfalls always arise. So we call on government.
All right,
Wow.
we're still having network issue with Ibadan. Let me just read this message that just came in from Osun State. I'm just trying to understand the basis it was written. It says that this set of people in government did the same thing to railway when they had great number of trailers for transportation. Now that there are trailers, now that those trailers are no more on the road, they came back to reestablish railway lines. I take it from me, all the investees established with our money will go the same way the trailers went. That's from Alhaji Akinwari from Ikere, Osun State. Let's see if Ibadan is still ready for us. So, Doctor, can you continue from where you stop? Yeah, you're just highlighting some of your demands. Quickly.
Thank you very much. I was actually mentioning the fifth point why we are on strike. I said is because of the non-remittance of our contributory funds, that is pension. To surprise you to know that as far back as 2013, resident doctors were removed from the pension scheme. The federal government woke up one morning and gave instructions through the Federal Ministry of Health that resident doctors and doctors alike are not pensionable. And that has been part of our struggle since then till now. We want federal government to reinstate us back through the pension scheme because we are bona fide workers of the federal government. And according to the 2014 Pension Act, resident doctors and doctors who are not on contract, who are not contract staff, are supposed to be on pension scheme. So that is one of the issues that has been raising a lot of coerce over this period. The last among the not the least is the non-payment of arrears. A lot of arrears that have been accruing all since 2014 till date. The federal government has refused to pay us our arrears, and has also refused to even pay some centers who have diligently worked over the years. Some centers have not even received December 2015 salary. Some have not even received December 2016 salary. So these are the issues in the front burner, and these are the reasons why we are on strike.
Very quickly, Doctor, so far, what are the negotiations and what are the things coming out of the negotiations with the federal government? Is there any end to all of these issues in any time soon?
Well, we've had 2 meetings with the federal government, following which a memorandum of terms of settlement was agreed upon. But it will surprise you to know that most of these agreements, some of them should have been fulfilled just within few days, but up to now, none has been fulfilled. and that is the reason why the strike is still on. And most of all these issues we highlighted do not actually need funds, as it were, in the immediate time. What actually needs is secularization, and the federal government has refused to do their own part. And what is making this strike to linger on is the issue of trust. We don't trust federal government. And then by the time we start seeing signs and symptoms of them trying to go over most of these agreements, that's when we'll take them serious. And I think that's when the strike will likely be called off. As it stands now, the strike is still on. It's total and indefinite strike until federal government assents to our demands.
All right, many thanks to you, Dr.
Okay.
Kelvin Ebuchulam, the Treasurer, NARD UCH Ibadan. Many thanks for joining us on the show.
Thank you,
this
Dr.
morning.
Kelvin, for that. I'm afraid that's about all we can take, but quick last words from you, Barrister Owebu, before we go.
I want to quickly talk on this issue of memorandum of settlement or terms of settlement.
All right.
You see, it's so unfortunate that a government or an executive arm of the government will go into what we call terms of settlement signed by them, and at the end of the day, they will not fulfill their own part. You know, in law, like in court, if a matter goes to court and you sign terms of settlement, by both parties. Once the time for the execution of terms of settlement elapses, it becomes enforceable against the other party. But the problem we have here is this. The three organs of government, they are no longer serving as a watchdog to each other. Today, the executive arm of government in Nigeria behaves as if they are supreme over every other organ. This is what the legislative arm of government should be doing by serving as a check to the executive. If they refuse to, adhere to their own condition of a terms of settlement, it becomes an impeachable offense.
Okay.
And it is only the National Assembly that can do that. Unfortunately, because of the party government will be having all this while, nothing of something. If you don't shake the executive, if you don't make them to sit up, they will not.
All right, thank you, Justice.
We hope the right people have heard the cry, but I'm excited that so far there's been some level of negotiation. We just hope that something meaningful will come out from this one, and finally the federal government will actually do what it ought to. Education is important, health is important. Let's do what is right. Thank you for watching the show today. We hope you enjoy the rain and have yourself a good day. See you next time.
Bye-bye for now. Let's do it again.